Hi, everyone, and welcome to this great conversation on women in Pan, part of the Better Tomorrow series. My name is Attillah Springer, and today it is my distinct pleasure to welcome our guest, Natasha Joseph, the Pan woman.
Yes.
Natasha, tell me about your first memories of Pan, being in a pan yard, seeing a steel pan, hearing it. What are some of those first memories for you?
My first memory wasn't so enjoyable. I remember at about maybe 4 or 5 looking at cartoons, and all of a sudden my cartoons cut for this noise on the TV. You know, I was fuming. I get up and I take off the TV. You know, I did not enjoy it at all. It just sounded like a lot of rah, 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 rah. Fast forward to 15 years old, student of Malik Secondary Comprehensive, student of Richard Gaskin, and that's my plumbing teacher. I did trade in school. We had a free period, and he was like, guys, I need you all to help me with something. I have some pans. And we went into the room and helped him clean them out. And then next thing you know, I end up with a pair of sticks in my hand, playing a bass, learning all the pans in the family. That's my first 2 experiences with pan.
Your father was a Harmonites man.
Exactly. So I probably was in the pan yard as a baby.
Yeah.
No memory of that. But he played with Harmonites for a couple of years with Earl Rodney. And he went to New York whenever they had their tour and came back and was, I wouldn't say a founding member, but a cemented member of their stateside.
Yeah. Do you see your involvement as a kind of continuation of that pan legacy?
Most definitely. A lot of the stuff that I tell myself is me is actually whatever I inherited from him. And I had no idea of this. One carnival, I went to Valley Harps to learn a song, a Panorama tune. And they didn't have the seconds. The seconds lock up in the container, the key gone. They had a side of tenor and a side of guitar. Well, a tenor and a side of guitar. And I play my parts on that. You know, I would switch my pans around, my double seconds, I'd switch it around and play. And those are things that he used to do. And I only found that out when I met 2 of his compadres in Margarita. And they telling me this and my jaw is dropping because I was like, I had no idea he used to do that stuff. Even the way I learned music in the pan yard, I wouldn't go and rush the instrument. I would sit down and listen for a good while. And then I would go approach the instrument. But that sit down and listen, that's something that he also used to do.
When you went home and said, oh, I want to play pan, what was their response?
My mom's response was typical to the old school stigma associated with, you know, being a panist or a pan man. So when I went home and said, I would like to learn to play the steel pan, she was like, no, steel pan is for dropouts. But, you know, being my determined self, and also the other fact that the pans were in school when she was home, I would practice from the end of school because I had a curfew to get home. So I'd practice when school was over for like 30 minutes and then hightail it over the hill because I live in Barataria, the school is in Mova, so literally hill, home. One day I forget myself. I reach home like 6:30. Where you was? In the barn room. Well, of course, we could all guess what happened after that. Punishment of sorts. My sister actually is the one who carried me in potential panyard. And I came back home and I asked again, no, you can't go, la la la. But the administration at the time, they had to come and beg 3 different occasions for her to allow me to play. And even school, even before Potential, my form teacher, Miss Hazel, what she used to teach, I think English, and Mr. Latouche had to show up on my mother's doorstep quite a number of times, pleading with my mother to allow me to be a member of the orchestra. Thankfully, she said yes at some point.
Now that you have had all of this success and you are actually making your life as a panist, how has her response changed over the years?
She's a proud parent. She sometimes remembers that period where she was like, no, she's happy that I wasn't so obedient. Because, then, my future may have looked different.
That whole idea, going back to Malik Secondary, when you accidentally encountered the pan, what was your trajectory from there into learning, into also you are pretty much a self-taught panist. What was the motivation for you to teach yourself how to play this instrument?
I think I just saw it as a continuation of music. Before Pan, I taught myself to play the recorder and also to read music playing the recorder. Before I actually got to the music, I had my own vocabulary and notes. I had notes called H and R and Z and all kind of thing. But when I got to the Panyard, I remember bringing my recorder books and transferring what I'd learned from recorder to the instrument. I think it was a double tenor at that time. I would do stuff like that. So Pan is definitely a continuation, and it's something that I would say definitely have a jumbie. It's like Pringles. Once you start, there's no turning back. It is whole year. Yeah. I actually had some defiant moments in my in my school pan career. Whenever there was a free period, I was in the pan room, playing something, learning something. There was one period I thought my English teacher did not come to school, and I was like, yes, because I had the keys. I was captain at that time. So I go on and I open up the room and I did enjoy myself playing, and then she show up with the principal. Natasha, I'm very disappointed in you. What are you doing here? Like, miss, I thought you didn't come.
But I think once they realized that you had a talent and aptitude, what support did you get from the school? What was the encouragement that then came for you to enter competitions and that sort of thing?
Well, in school, there was not much of that kind of encouragement to enter competitions. But I was allowed to arrange music for my schoolmates. So I did that. My first encouragement to enter a competition would have been Pan Ramajay, 93. So I started playing Pan in 91, joined Potential Symphony in 92, and met Professor Philmore, the late, great Ken Professor Philmore. And he was a very encouraging guy. So he would, as part of the stateside, he would come and say, all right, guys, you all had to learn to solo. And whatever song we was learning, he would just look at you and say, solo. I used to do my homework. Yeah, I used to do my homework. So I would, try to study the chords beforehand and stuff like that. But he was one of the biggest encouragements in terms of like performance, of course, competition.
So 2 years since you accidentally encountered this pan, you enter Pan Ramajay. You would have been... As a soloist. How old would you have been? About 17 or
somewhere
something?
Around there.
And you placed second in this national competition.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like? What was the song that you played? What jitters you had? Had you played in Panorama before? before reaching to the competition?
Yeah, I played Panorama in 92. And 92 and 93. So I did Can't Stop the Moment from Whining in 92, 93. I'm not sure. I think it was Dust in Your Face. I do remember. But 93, that would have been my first year in Pan Ramajay. I had a lot of jitters because I'm like, I'm not too sure if I know what's going on here. I made it to semifinals. They picked 5 people, and I placed 8th. So I missed it just by 3. But I went the following year, and that's when I came second. That year, I picked the same song every time. We had to pick songs out of a hat. First time I picked My Band, okay, cool. I really liked swing by that time. This was 94. So I told the band, I say, well, when we finish, play the verse and chorus, let's go straight into swing. And my solo would be in that swing genre. I went through preliminaries, semifinals. They say, okay, let's pick another song. I literally swizzle all these songs in the hat. Pick My Band. I said, okay. I don't know how I could outdo the prelims, but let's try. So the finals, I was really hoping for not that song. Lo and behold, swizzle around even more. I pick up about 3, and I drop 2. My Band again.
Wow.
Yeah, that was something else. They say lightning don't strike the same place more than once. Well, definitely had some lightning there with that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so what was your preparation like for the competition?
Well, we had to learn 16 songs, and they would all have different chord progressions and be in different keys. So a lot of my time was spent just familiarizing myself with the melody and the chord progression. There was one time I was practicing by a friend of mine, and Clive Bradley was there. So I got some tips on harmony from him, how to end the melody in a particular part. That was a nice experience, because I was amazed. He was doing it lying down on a chair. He was like, oh yeah, you see that note, you play that note. And those things were amazing to me.
So by this time you're out of school, you are making a decision about what you're going to do with the rest of your life. What role does Pan play in the decision making that's going on for you at that particular point?
I think everything where my career is concerned kind of happened as a domino effect. So just out of leaving school, I would have been doing things like craft, or make chains, bracelets and stuff like that to sell. But I'd also be in the pan yard a lot. I can't remember the name of the company, but Lauren O'Connor.
Rituals. Yeah.
Rituals.
Yes.
Right. And one day she approaches me and says, well, Selwyn has to go away, and we're looking for a teacher to fill in for him at St. Andrews. I jumped at the chance. And so after St. Andrews, everything after that it just kept, it's not like I didn't decide, I'm going to look for somewhere to teach or someone to teach. Most of the time, I always get approached, do you teach? Could you teach?
Being self-taught, how does that impact on how you teach? I mean,
Yes.
how are the two things? Because, certainly as someone who was self-taught, you had lots of workarounds, you had lots of ways
Lots of skipping the fundamental theory and all of that. So as a self-taught tutor, what I learned early on, how to be led in teaching. So my students informed me on how to teach them. that was awesome because it allowed me the ability to assess each new student and each new group of students as their own individual and to be able to adjust to suit their particular learning style.
When I find out about your transition through different bands, so you started off in Potential Symphony.
From Potential, phase 2.
What prompted that move for you? What was the turning point that sent you from Potential into
phase 2?
Into phase 2.
As a young person at that time in Potential Symphony, I wanted to get experience of a big band. I think we all had that same kind of aspiration. So it was myself, Avis Bruce, Callan Harewood, and we all wanted to, experience what it was like to be in that kind of environment. So I remember one carnival season really, walking down Charlotte Street, walking into Renegades, end up behind a pan, learn piece of the song, and say, all right, yes, this was nice. Walk down the road, went to All Stars, observed them from a distance, and say, yeah, this is nice, but I'm not sure I know how I'm feeling about it. And I was still in Potential, and I met a friend of a student of mine who was playing with phase 2 at the time. And she encouraged me to learn the Panorama song on 4-pan. And that was it there for me. Again, the drum beat, up me.
Yeah.
The phase 2 drum beat.
Tell me about walking into phase 2's yard and meeting Boogsie, interacting with Boogsie, and how your relationship evolved from you just being some random young woman who walked into the band to play with them to becoming eventually their drill master.
That is a very long journey. That same year where I learned the music on the 4-pan, I did not end up playing that year, but I was happy to learn the music. And so the following year is when I decided I'm going to play with phase 2. Yes, this carnival, that is my band. So I went and learned the song. Boogsie was like this giant of a person. So it was always a humbling experience, and still is, to actually be in his presence and learn from him. Now, having said that, my early days of phase 2 was not an easy one. Nobody would teach me the music. Nobody would teach me the music, and there was never a pan available. But that was no problem. I just used to stand up and take them in, listen, watch, and as soon as somebody move, I go in behind there and I play in the song, and everybody would be like, who teach she that? Where she come from? So I had a couple years of that before maybe they noticed who is this person, and could put a name to the female that is playing these double seconds. And I had a lot of simultaneous things happening. So I would be, one year, playing with phase 2, verse and chorus going on for like 2 hours. My brain get idle, I walk out the panyard, I end up in Invaders, I end up in Valley Harps. I learn about 7 Panorama tunes in addition to going to Tobago and playing with Pan Fanatics, which is a single pan band. The following year, I end up arranging for them. So then, Boogsie started here, Natasha does arrange and that kind of thing. And he knew that I was a drill master from the first time that I learned the song, because that's what I was doing with Potential when I went to learn phase 2's music.
Right.
Yeah, so he knew that.
Right.
That's why I didn't end up playing with phase 2, because I was there whole evening. And it was 12 midnight, and I hadn't reached the potential as yet. So I was like, oh, my God. So I went to Boogsie. I said, Boogsie, I'm drilling potential, and, well, I have the song here since 4 o'clock. We're on a break. I say, I'm going to go meet my band. He said, okay, bye. Don't come back. I said, okay. That's Boogsie.
Yeah.
He don't spare any words. I was not mad at him.
No,
but I had my priorities and he had his.
Yeah.
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 But you went back to phase 2.
Oh, most definitely. I went back. I just didn't go back that year. No, but his music is definitely worth it.
Do you see any gender dynamics in the difficulty of your entry into being an entrenched part of phase 2?
Most definitely. Because it was always, who is she? How come they don't know my name? And I know everybody's name. And especially in those times, it would have had a lot more male persons playing, especially in phase 2. Not a lot of females, and not a lot on double seconds. So we had Michelle on tenor, we had Susie on double seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember another female besides Susie on double seconds in that period. And I heard a guy saying, who she feels she is. What does he mean by that statement? Who he feel he is?
What is your state of mind going into a space like that is not making space for you? How has your journey, steeled you to keep going back? Because, if you're going into a space and you're feeling uncomfortable, the natural thing is to just leave. But what is it about your personality that kept you going back to a point where, your talent and your discipline and all of those things had to be recognized and respected?
Well, I was always a very determined child. Some part of my personality loves a challenge. It didn't really bother me too much that, it wasn't a welcoming space. And I also have a deep love for the instrument. And then that married with Boogsie's music, how could you keep me away? How could I stay away?
Talk to me about your sojourns and adventures in arranging, because that's also a space where there are not a lot of women really representing. You also work with several Tobago steel bands, arranging for them. What was your entry into working with bands in Tobago, but also what was your entry into arranging, having the confidence to arrange?
My entry into arranging started in school. I wanted to learn 1990, the song 1990, because I went to Malik in that same year. And I love that song. And I couldn't figure out the chords. So I went to one of my neighbors, whose name is Ashiba. I said, Ashiba, you know the chords for 1990? Now, at this point, I don't even know how to spell a chord, right? So he write down A minor, D minor, whatever. I say, okay, how you, what is that? So then he goes on to explain the triads, and then he wrote it out. He wrote the A, C, E, D, F, A. And I quickly realized the system, how the chords are formed, stacked in thirds. And I figured out every chord after that. Just stacking thirds and, sharpening or flattening particular things. So I started in school. I started arranging in school all by myself. I would come with the song in my head and I'd work it out on every instrument and play it on all the pans. And that continued in Potential Symphony as well. When I was a member of the stateside there, I would leave home. I'd be in the panyard by 9 a.m. And I would work on whatever song it was that I wanted to arrange and play it on all the pans. Eventually, that led to me arranging songs, like a song for the stateside. I don't even know how it really happened, but just before my 18th birthday, I had the opportunity to arrange for Chordmasters. That was real nice.
So you did your first arrangement for a steel band for Panorama at age 18 years old.
Yeah, well, it would have been 17. My birthday was the day of prelims.
Wow. And how did the band do as part of the competition?
In that competition, we didn't progress. We made it to prelims. We performed, and that was it there. That didn't faze me in any way.
After that first experience, when was the next time that you arranged for Panorama?
The next time would have been with Pan Fanatics in Tobago. The year prior, I went to support Johan Popwell. He was arranging for them. So I went as somebody just to, help beef up the front line. The following year, he couldn't make it. So I think that's how I ended up there. He recommended me. And I arranged for them for about 3 years after that.
And what was the experience like? I mean, arranging, being a drill master, all of those things are very different roles. What is your favorite role to play in the panyard?
I don't think I have a favorite role. I like all of them. As an arranger, it's nice to have a songboard for your ideas so that they're not just all up in your head. So that aspect of being an arranger is very enjoyable. As a drill master or mistress, it's nice to be able to listen and observe and to be able to hear the subtle changes, almost like decorating somebody's space. So the space is already there and you come and you figure out ways to enhance what is already there. And that I like that a lot.
Talk to me about the genesis of Platinum. The idea of an all-woman steel band is one that's been around for a while. What was the inspiration for Platinum?
The founder of Platinum, Trevor Gilden, who most people would know as Carlin Yearwood's father. That was his baby. And he wanted to have an all-female steel band, to highlight the females. And he wanted to have a small band, a small conventional band of females. Unfortunately, they could never make the minimum amount of females needed to go forward as a small band. So they converted down to a single pan band. And I came in kind of after the fact. I came in years after when they decided, okay, we're going to go Panorama and be like the first all-female band in the Panorama. You can't go Panorama with an all-female band and not have a female arranger. So my good friend, Colin, called me, say, girl. Now, by that time, I had resigned arranging for single pan because it is not an easy task. He said, girl, we have an all-female band and ting. And I was like, I jumped at it because, what? All females? Nah, I had to support this.
Yeah.
I think some people were surprised that these females could play so well. But it shouldn't really be a shock because we have a lot of females and a lot of steel bands all over the place. Platinum being no different. All the females that we had actually came from other bands. So we had some from Renegades, some from Silver Stars, some from Potential, some from Sour East Side, all combined to make Platinum.
What was the response from the judges?
I think they were pleased with our performance. They gave some good recommendations, which I did try to work on in terms of arrangement. We made it to finals. I was very happy about that, seeing that previous times I hadn't made it to finals. So this was a definite difference career-wise as a arranger in a category that I had sworn I was never doing ever again.
Let's talk about your Tobago experience. Traveling from Trinidad to Tobago strictly for the purpose of arranging and working with Tobago-based bands, and then having to come back to Trinidad to play for competition and that sort of thing.
Just the traveling was very exhausting. But you know, at the time, you don't really notice that because the level of excitement, you know, I hardly would have ever been to Tobago before that. So that was part of the excitement, to be in the Sister Isle. My grandmother is from there. My paternal grandmother is from Tobago. And so I was happy to be there, happy to be given another opportunity. Most of our rehearsals happened during the day, or like evening time into night, because people had different working schedules, and the view was lovely. We used to practice in Bacalet Bay, and it was a club, so you'd walk down, and then there was just this big open space, and then in front of that open space was the ocean. So every time the boat coming from Trinidad, you would see, and every time it leave.
What was the reception from the Tobago Pan players, the Tobago Pan community welcoming you in to be part of their process?
I felt very welcome, and I was always well taken care of and supported as an arranger. Drilling in Tobago, because I also did that for some years with Carib Dixieland, was an awesome experience. And I love Tobago so much, I ended up living there for a year and a half after.
And what were you doing there? Were you doing other pan-related stuff? Were you working as a full-time musician the way that you work in Trinidad as well?
I wasn't working as a full-time musician, but I taught part-time in Wayne Anglican School. And I also arranged for the stateside of Carib Dixieland. I did a couple of workshops, introduction to improvisation, and we played gigs.
Talk to me about your life making your way as a full-time musician, and also carving a niche as a teacher, as a tutor, as somebody who people can turn to learn the national instrument.
After teaching in St. Andrews, I went on to Bishop's Junior School, then to Sacred Heart, but all whilst also being a member of Panazz Players, who was also touring all over the place. Panazz wasn't Panazz at the time that I got into the band. They were rehearsing with Potential Symphony for Pan Ramajay in 1992. And I was a member of Potential Symphony at the time. I just completed my first Panorama, and I saw them practicing there, and I wanted to be a part of the band. And they told me they already had everybody. By that time, I was aware of the competition and so on. And I was just very interested in playing with them because they sounded really good. So every evening after my personal rehearsal, I would go and just hang around, sometimes play the drums, keep a timing for them, and ask the question every night, can I play? And every night, the same response. No, we have everybody already. But I knew they didn't have 10 people yet. But one night, however, when I asked if I could play, Johann Popwell tried to maybe probably tried to let me down easy. He says like, darling, we want somebody who could represent the band and solo and so on. And so I said, oh, okay. I went home. I had a tenor pan home. I practiced all day on my tenor pan. I composed a solo. I went up the next evening and I played it on a 4-pan. And I called them. I say, come. I played the solo. And they were amazed. So they put me on double tenor after that. We subsequently won that Pan Ramajay. And the following year, Panazz Players was born. Being the lone female in a band with mainly men, so 9 males and me, the female, I also learned how to hold my own, right? And that was not easy. I had to stand up for myself quite a lot, especially when we would learn new music. The solo section was up for grabs all the time. So new song, this is the solo part, whoever take it, get it kind of stuff. And I remember my early days of that, I would jump in with whatever idea I have, but as soon as one of the guys start, I would be like, oh my God. And eventually I learned like, well, if you really want this, you had to be like that. So, I got a good training in how to hold your own, regardless of who you are. And I mean, Panazz is a mixture of pan and jazz. And the jazz idiom also involves improvisation. So that was a main part of being in the band. If you couldn't improvise, you couldn't really be there. I had 7 great years with Panazz. While touring and performing with them, I was also actively involved as a primary school music teacher. Never really advertise, I just teach pan, I just teach music. It's always somebody that recommends. So I guess my skill and my knowledge speak for itself, and most of the time I've been recommended by someone else to teach or arrange or something like that.
What was the journey back to school for you?
Prior to UE, as a member of Panazz, I applied to Berkeley in Boston. In that time, there wasn't any full scholarships awarded to international students. I applied anyway, I auditioned, myself and Sheldon Webster from Panazz. And we received a small grant. We had successful auditions. We was allowed admission into Berkeley, but neither of us had any money. So at the time, our manager, Panazz manager, one of Panazz managers, Lisa Ghani, she advocated to different organizations for donations. And for some of them, I would go and perform and, just let them know what my plan is and so on. Now, that did not work out because I did raise some money, but it wasn't enough to cover even a month of school boarding, food, books, and all of that. Even then, I still didn't give up. I didn't throw in the towel just yet. I was still determined, okay, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to figure out a way to live and go to school and somehow be able to pay for my tuition. What really sealed the deal of me not pursuing that, it was the date of my appointment, September 11. As I reach up to the window, put my documents through the glass, the woman just shoved back my documents and say, oh, y'all have to get out of here. Turn around and look at the TV. The second plane already hit the building. And I was like, okay. this has to be a sign. This has to be a sign from God saying, I know you really want to go there, but maybe not now. So, I continued doing what I do, teach, perform. I did a lot of recordings for not my own album, but other albums, songs where people wanted a little flavor of Pan. I ended up doing 2 albums, one chutney classics on Pan and film classics on Pan with Emmanuel Hector when he was in the country. In terms of the schooling, well, Berkeley didn't happen. I continued with my life, but as a self-taught person, I already had a lot of books that I was still teaching myself. By that time, I had started to teach myself how to play bass guitar. All of this continued. It got to the point where I had friends attending university, and I would be the one to come and teach them whatever the subject matter was that was music related. My name came up in conversation one day. Someone said, "Who? Natasha? She's not qualified." I say, "Oh, the paper matters." It didn't really matter to me because I knew what I know. So I decided, you know what, maybe it's time to become qualified. And at that time, I had no qualifications whatsoever other than what I knew. So I went and I did ABRSM exam, grade 5, passed with distinction. I went and I did the Pan exam, grade 5, passed with distinction. And then Chantal Esdelle encouraged me. She's like, "Okay, well, time to join UE." And I did. I applied for the bachelor's, but I didn't have enough academic qualifications, so they offered me certificate, and I took it.
And what was that experience like, being self-taught and then going into an academic setting, back to front?
Cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my time in UE, and being self-taught didn't really affect me in terms of learning whatever was presented in the music-related classes. I already knew and understood that. What UE helped me to be able to do is to make my class content more progressive, how to deliver it so my students' brains not fried all the time. Because as a teacher, once I see you absorbing information, I used to get excited. So by the end of the class, you're like... So UE helped a lot with, being able to plan and make sure that I meet all goals and objectives intended.
So after the certificate, you continued on to get your bachelor's degree. What was that process like for you?
Well, that was easy. Originally, I applied for the bachelor's. So that was my whole focus, to complete the certificate, which would allow for easy matriculation into the bachelor's degree. So for the entire certificate period, I was kind of like, can't wait to get the bachelor's. When I, finally matriculated into the bachelor's degree, I was happy. And I didn't have much musical challenges in terms of the academic stuff. Well, the musical courses. Definitely, English wasn't my strongest language. So I benefited a lot from, learning to express myself academically in the degree. So at the beginning of degree, the biggest thing was thesis. I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't fail thesis now, because fast forward 3 years, I passed my thesis with flying colors. I got like 91 on my thesis and was awarded first class honors in my degree. Fast forward 3 years to 2020. This would have been my final year, my final semester. Carnival just finished, school resumed, and then the pandemic happened. And for a couple of weeks, we were kind of worried about, well, oh my God, they're going to delay me finishing my degree. What's going to happen? But our lecturers adjusted well and quickly. So most of our courses happened on Zoom, and it also allowed me, the time to put towards research for my thesis. So we all finished school. We were the first group of students to finish university during the pandemic and graduate virtually.
Just going back to your thesis, what was your thesis about? How are you using that research that was done to advance your career now, advance your life in music?
The thesis was based on the amplification and the song reproduction of the steelpan. But I couldn't just base it on just steelpan, so I narrowed it down to the double seconds. Initially, so pre-pandemic, it was supposed to be a field test. Test the different mics, different surfaces, different positions and distances. I only got an opportunity to start the process. When the pandemic happened, well, we couldn't come to the studio and all of that. So it shifted from a field study to me learning about the physics and the acoustics of the instrument, and realizing the kind of limitations that we have with the steelpan being an acoustic instrument that only has one resonator, which is what we call the skirt. I did learn a lot, and it kind of sent me in different directions. So what I ended up doing was interviewing a lot of the industry professionals who play the frontline pans, tuners, sound engineers, and our principal, Mr. Brian Copeland, because he's really good with acoustics. So he had also some recommendations that I would not have heard about previously, in terms of the song reproduction. And I mean, this is a topic that is very close to my heart, because being a performer, sometimes you end up in some spaces where you're competing with the environment, you're competing with the audience, you're competing with the other musicians on stage, especially in a conventional setting where you have a keyboard and guitar and drums, and they all, they have direct lines, and then they're trying to capture this acoustic thing that bleeds from this instrument and this and that. And on top of just that, the instrument itself has a lot of overtones that create unwanted noise and modulation of the actual notes that we hear. But this one have the octave that, and it's also pulling from right there too. The first octave is the overtone. For me, is a place where we get to start to do research and development. It can't happen with just one person or one type of person. The tuner, the player, the engineer, all have to, they need a lab by themselves to figure out what we could do about this. Quite by accident, I found something that helps to kill some of the skirt noise and modulation on the instruments. I purchased a tenor stand from innovator Jimmy Phillip that is like a snare drum stand. So instead of have the pan hanging, you rest it down. And what that does is it adds stability for the skirt. So when you play, you get more of the fundamental song coming up at you, as opposed to sound plus. It's the best way I could describe it.
You mentioned the name Chantal Esdelle as somebody who supported you to go into UE. Could you talk about any other women who were part of your journey in Pan, part of your journey as a teacher, part of your journey in the Pan Yard itself?
I lived in Barataria. I still live there. And my route home, we would pass in front of Don Batson's mother's house and hear the piano playing, and everybody would be like, oh, that's Don Batson's house. So I knew the name long before I met the person. So that was a name always in my head, and like, okay, wow, that's cool. Michelle Huggins is somebody that I look up to as a example of, what I could aspire to be. Merle Albino Di Coto, that's a name that was just ringing all the time. And I mean, I'm from Barataria, she not living far. I would not have interacted with any of them on a personal level, but definitely just hearing about, their contributions to music and their contributions in the steel pan definitely was, what is the word I'm looking for? A motivation, like, hey, I could do this too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also a long history. I mean, there's Girl Pat Steel Orchestra, and there's a long history of women being involved in Pan. Are there any names that come out of your research, out of your you're digging into that story of where you fit on that continuum of women in Pan? Who are some of those women who you think about as inspiration, as motivation, right through the years from the start of the Steelman movement?
Definitely Hazel Henley, founder of Girl Pat. Jocelyn Pear, she would have been musical director with Marionette's Panam North Stars combination. Judy Wedderburn, who would have formed the first all-female steel band in Jamaica in 1964. Pastel Intruders from Antigua. I think they were 1952, if I'm not mistaken. June Nathaniel, her work with All Stars. Pat Bishop, a monster of a human. She just had to walk into a space and the energy change. So she's another one that I would have definitely look up to as, yeah, I could be like that. She is in a class by herself. But one name that I've come to know over the years is Elan Joseph. Right? She is very instrumental in music education, using the steel pan as the main instrument. And she has produced many, 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 many musicians working with Diamond Vale Government Primary School. I met her as, being part of Panazz. Her husband, Richard, was our drummer. So they would come to rehearsals with all the kids. I had no idea she was a teacher. It's only years after, seeing her involved in all kind of different things, parang side, playing guitar, and then being my lecturer at UE.
Transcribing is also part of the work that you do as someone involved in Pan. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me about the importance of the transcription work? What role does that play in terms of the preservation, but also in terms of the ensuring that people understand the work that goes into arrangement?
Yeah, the transcription process is a necessary one. I remember as a younger person going into Pan Trinidad and they had a few copies of Phase 2. I can't remember the arrangements. And I was like, hey, this is cool. I had no idea I would end up doing that. The first song I transcribed was just for fun. So after going to Phase 2 and learning, what was the name of that song? Mind Your Business, I think it was. When I finally got a computer, that was the first thing I did. I was like, because that music was so sweet. I wanted to retain what I learned, thinking in the bigger picture of things. You know, years from now, anybody or any group wanting to learn a Panorama song that they hear, that they liked, if it's not transcribed, it'd be a difficult task. Because there are lots of things going on inside the music that you can't easily just hear from a recording. Transcribing Steelband music for me is crucial. It's like, just like how we save stuff on a computer, so that you could retrieve it later. So decades from now, you could have an exact replica. Almost just like how Beethoven and their symphonies, now you could go on IMSLP and download full parts and have the exact orchestration. Now we need more of that happening. We need a lot more of that happening. I know Mark Luquan has been very instrumental in the archival of arrangements over the years. And I've worked with him directly and indirectly in transcription of material like that.
What does a better tomorrow for Pan look like for you?
A better tomorrow for Pan, what would that look like for me? Us being more fluent in the history, the who's who of yesterday, male or female. Because I have some students that if I call certain names, they're like, who is that? And these are people who are still alive. So really knowing your history, knowing how this instrument that you love so much, how it reached here, who were the people responsible. A better tomorrow also looks like a space where, I'm using this word plenty, but where we are allies and advocates for one another. So in a man's world, then, we get to have men be our allies and advocate for us, which is not something that is currently happening a lot. It happens, but it could happen more. So maybe we need to teach our guys how to do that for us, because, some of them might not really have a clue that they not supporting us as much as we could be supported as females. And a better tomorrow would also see the continuation of females coming to the forefront and putting themselves out there. There are some females who currently are doing this, but we don't know them all.
How do you see your work connected to that building of a better tomorrow?
Mainly in the area of music and education. My hope is that one day we not all learning music by rote alone. Learning music by rote has its advantages and should never be taken away. But the inclusion of more basic music education in a Panyard setting would definitely, to me, allow for a quicker learning process for everyone involved. So I see my future going in that direction in terms of what I intend to to contribute.
Natasha, thank you so much for sharing your stories and adventures of your life as a woman in Pan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.